Plenty of teams in college football are set for interesting years, and Florida State is definitely one of those teams. When you look at what happened last year, the uniqueness of their season, the disappointment of what happened in their inability to be selected for the college football playoff, or rather the playoff not selecting them. Now they come into the 2024 season with a chip on their shoulder, but they're going to do it with a lot of new faces. I really expect some good things from Mike Norvell and the staff in terms of finding ways to embrace that underdog role and utilizing that motivation. And it'll be fun to see how they turn that into wins. We are taking a deep dive into the Florida State Seminoles today. But before we do that, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video. It goes a long way in helping this channel. And it's so far been a great series for the channel, and you all are the reason why it's been so good. So let's keep that going and let's dive into Florida State. Now, the Seminoles are in good hands with Mike Norvell. I think that he has done an incredible job, exceeded expectations for a lot of people. I think there were some people that maybe thought that this wasn't going to be the best experience for Norvell and the Seminoles, but he has done a really good job of bringing the right talent in and finding the right players to fit what they're looking to do offensively, defensively, and he has the right staff in place. Alex Atkins is back as the offensive coordinator, and that's huge. This is someone who has been rumored to be a head coach potential candidate at a lot of different schools, and he comes back to run what should be a really exciting offense. It's going to be an offense with plenty of new faces, but you also have a ton of talent with how Florida State's been recruiting. It's going to be exciting to see how they put everything together on the field. You also have Adam Fuller, one of the most aggressive coordinators in college football. The number of blitzes he'll dial up, different pressures. You're looking at someone who is going to try and take the life out of an offense. And he works around his personnel and utilizes them in the way that they are going to be successful, which is really exciting if you are a Florida State fan. And I think also this is a team that has the defensive talent to be able to make things really exciting for them in the ACC. This is a conference that is going to be a little bit tighter than probably last year, but at the same time, you feel pretty good about where Florida State sits and what they have coming back. So you don't have too many concerns about what the coaching staff is going to do, what this talent is going to do, the depth that they have. You feel pretty good about what you have coming back. And then also, you feel really good about what this group did in the transfer portal because you brought in a number of talented players that are going to step up and potentially play right away or be part of a rotation. You bring in plenty of talent on the defensive side of the ball. Guys like Omarion Cooper and Cam Riley are probably the two names that are most recently added to this program. And again, this coaching staff is never done. They're always looking for talent to bring in. And Cooper comes from Colorado. So we'll see how much that transitions or that translates, I should say, to Florida State. Colorado was a very interesting program last year. Cam Riley is going to be a solid player for the linebacker position. You also bring in Sean Murphy from Alabama. You bring his teammate Roydell Williams on the offensive side of the ball at running back. So I really like what he's capable of doing for this offense. And like I said, when you've looked at Mike Norvell's track record and you look at his history, especially his time at Memphis, you see a lot of running back success. So you feel pretty good about Roydell Williams and what he brings to the table to that offense. Sione Lolohea is going to be an interesting player on the defensive side of the ball, on the defensive line. Again, there's so much talent on this defensive line. So finding a way to get into the game will be interesting. Richie Leonard, it'll be fun on the offensive line, on the interior, someone who is ready to take on a new role. And I would say this team really embraced the transfer portal and definitely utilized the transfer portal via Alabama because they brought in a number of players that will contribute or be future contributors. So guys like Earl Little, TJ Ferguson, even Malik Benson. I know that this staff is really excited about his potential, about what he can do. Devontae Brown comes in from Miami. You have a number of players that are going to step up right away and play. So you have plenty of talented players coming in. And that's what's really good about this program is that they've done a good job of identifying talent and bringing in players that can either start right away or have a bright future. A guy like Marvin Jones Jr. is an example of that. Has a bright future for Florida State and could be here for a little while to make an impact over multiple seasons. Jalen Lucas is an underrated talent coming from Indiana. And then obviously DJ Uyunglele is going to be the talk of the town because of his connections to Clemson and what he brings to the table. He is going to be someone we discuss in length during this video. So you also lose some players. You lost some players mostly to the NFL draft because that's how good Florida State was last year. But you also lose certain players. You lose Greedy Vance, you lose Gilbert Edmond, you lost Tate Rodemaker. So various levels of departures. So some of those you probably feel better about than others. I don't think you in the transfer portal, I don't think Florida State loses a ton where you necessarily feel like you are going to worry about what the future looks like for this team. But they did lose a couple of pieces that obviously now you need to find some more rotational players. But I know that this fan base feels really good about where they're at. And then there's certain positions that everyone's got their eye on. The quarterback position is definitely one of those. We talked about DJU before, and now we'll dive into what he brings to the table. I'm very curious to see what he can do because when you look at what Mike Norvell has done in years past. I specifically go back to his Memphis days, and you look at what he had in quarterbacks like Brady White and Riley Ferguson. I wish he could have had more time at Memphis. You get a guy like Paxton Lynch under his tutelage, and for a long period of time, I feel like that's a pretty good combination. But DJ gets to learn from both Norvell and Atkins, and I think that he is going to love the ability to do a lot of different things. They are going to utilize his arm, but they're also going to utilize his legs. I think that that's a good thing for this offense because they need to open up the playbook a little bit more than maybe you did last year. So this is a team that has plenty of talent surrounding DJ, but DJ is going to have to play a big role. He's probably the X factor of the offense, to be completely honest, and he needs to play well. Now, granted, this is also an offense that could take some steps forward. Yes, Jordan Travis was a solid quarterback, but this offense wasn't the most explosive that you might have expected from a Mark Norvell and Alex Atkins led offense. So you need to take a step forward. There's definitely room for improvement if you are the Florida State Seminoles. And DJ has the talent to make some really exciting throws, but the question is just going to be what does his ceiling look like? That's probably the biggest question surrounding his game and we're not entirely sure what we're going to get. I like the combination of him joining this staff, but is it going to work out? Is it going to be the success story that a lot of people think? That is going to be the biggest question. But again, this is a guy with a good frame. He has a solid arm and he has the ability to run. I think it's just finding a way to tap into that potential and bring it out more consistently. The rushing attack last year finished 77th. That is definitely an area that they are looking to improve, and they'll have to because when you lose some really talented players, you lose Keon Coleman, you lose Johnny Wilson. Those are two big targets, and we'll talk about the pass catchers and the excitement that they bring to the table. But this is a group that needs to run the football better. The reason why you bring in Roydell Williams, you also have Lawrence Toafili coming back, so you feel pretty good about where this team is at. We talked about Jalen Lucas before. Jalen Lucas is a potential star for this team, and that's saying a lot for someone who's going to probably start the year as the third string running back. He is explosive. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that this is an offensive staff that likes to be creative. They like to find ways to get their playmakers the football, and that's going to happen with guys like Williams, Toafili, and Lucas. So you feel pretty good about that running back room, and you feel like they are going to take a step forward in terms of running the football more efficiently. They feel like they have a good set of offensive linemen coming back. That is also a big part of that puzzle. To be able to move the football requires your offensive line to play really well, protect your quarterback, as well as open things up for the rushing attack. We'll obviously talk about that more in a little bit, but that is a combination that feels pretty good on top of having DJ being able to run the football and his size adding to that rushing attack. So you feel pretty good about what this team can do. Again, we've seen Mike Norvell figure ways to feature what's going to be his strength. At his Memphis days, there were times where the rushing attack was easily the strength, and he did not waste time by trying to throw the football a ton. He embraced that where we're going to run the football. This is what we're going to do. This is our identity, and we'll complement it with the pass. He also did it vice versa. So this is a staff that knows what they're doing. They brought in pieces to help in certain areas, and they know where they need to improve. Now, the passing attack, like we mentioned before, you lose Coleman and Wilson. Those are two huge losses. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. That being said, this is a group of wide receivers that has so much potential, and there's plenty of talent, plenty of athleticism, plenty of speed to make everyone's life in the ACC miserable. I'm not saying they're going to take a huge step back. Maybe they do take a step back, but if you're looking at the ceiling and what it could be, this is a group that could be just fine. Obviously, there are a bunch of different factors that play into this, DJ being one of them, but also the guys that are running routes. How are they going to get open for their new quarterback? How much chemistry do they have coming into the season? That's going to be another question. So guys like Ja'Kai Douglas have plenty of talent to be able to make this a really fun offense. We talked about Malik Benson coming in from Alabama. Malik Benson is someone who has speed for days, and obviously it just didn't work out at Alabama. But now everything that I've heard coming out of Florida State is that he is ready to go. He is showing how good he can be. And that's going to be really exciting for Florida State. And that'll be really fun for this staff to utilize. Hakeem Williams is another freak athlete who's going to be fun to watch to see if he can step into a bigger role. He only had 80 yards as a true freshman, but that was good experience for him. He learned behind Coleman and Wilson. He understands now what it takes to be a number one receiver, to be a guy that's a go-to player downfield. He understands what is required. It's just a matter of getting to that point. So these wide receivers, at least the starters, you feel pretty good about what they bring to the table. Booth Span is another one that could step up and play a big role. Jalen Brown's a redshirt freshman that has plenty of talent. You also have certain players that maybe play more of a rotational role right now, but you also have plenty of players with experience. So it's going to be fun to see who steps up, who's going to be that go-to guy. And that's one of the exciting things about the offseason. We get to talk about guys like this. I know the staff really likes Hakeem Williams. They really like Malik Benson, Ja'Kai Douglas. They like that trio that they have. It's just a matter of who is going to be the guy to step up. Maybe they have one, maybe they have two, or maybe all three step up and play to their potential. That's exactly what this team needs. And even though there's a lot of unknown with this team, there's also plenty of excitement that's surrounding this passing attack as well. The tight end position feels like it's in a little bit better spot. Kyler Morlock is coming back after a solid season, 255 yards, averaged 13.4 yards per catch. Landon Thomas is back as a freshman that is really intriguing at 6'4", 245 pounds. So you have some freshmen also creeping into that two deep, maybe even the three deep. That's really exciting for the future of this team. I think that Mike Norvell has done a good job of addressing certain positions in certain areas through recruiting. Obviously, they're doing a good job in the transfer portal, but they know that high school recruiting is going to help them more long term. And you've seen some of that with the players that are playing in the skill positions. Hakeem Williams is a perfect example of that. And we go to the offensive line. We talked about them earlier. This is the group that has a big role this year because of what you have in terms of questions in certain positions. You have questions about quarterback. You have questions about wide receiver. You have questions about the rushing attack. There are questions. Now, again, there's talent, but you have some things that need to be sorted out and need to be sorted out fairly quickly because there's not a ton of time to get acclimated to each other and figure out if you're ready to go or not. You need to hit the ground running because you're going to have, and we're diving into the schedule more in a little bit, but you have plenty of tests early and often if you're Florida State. So the offensive line plays a big role in that, and you feel pretty good about what they have coming back. You bring back a number of players that played a huge role last year. You return 3 of 5 starters, which is huge. The 2 guard positions are going to be probably the biggest question that you have there. So we'll see who steps up and fills those roles. You have Darius Washington coming back, Maurice Smith, and you also get Jeremiah Byers, and he has great experience there. Now, the guard positions, who steps up here? That's probably the biggest question. And, Keandre Jones and Richie Leonard are 2 guys that come to mind, should be playing or participating, competing for those starting spots. Even Ferguson could be in that rotation as well. So they have plenty of options. It's not like they're lacking in terms of talent. And I think that you have the right pieces in place. Darius Washington is a solid left tackle to have. Maurice Smith, having him back at center is going to pay huge dividends, maybe more than a lot of people realize. Having your center back isn't as important as a quarterback, but it's up there. And the fact that you have him returning is huge. So this offensive line has a lot of potential to make a huge impact on this team, and it could dictate how successful they are. Again, staying healthy will be a key because if you can stay healthy, you feel pretty good about your chances this year. And Florida State, again, has talent is not going to be a question with Florida State. It's going to come down to chemistry, it's going to come down to execution, and it's going to come down to the health of certain positions. If you can stay healthy and your group is reaching its potential and DJ is able to take that step forward and play to a different level than we've seen over the past couple of years, this offense is going to look a lot better than a lot of people expect. So that's going to be a huge part of it. The defense will also play a huge part of it as well. That's not a surprise. And this is a group that maybe you feel a little bit more certain about, even with some of the players that they lost. You obviously lose Braden Fisk, you lose Jared Verse, you lose a number of talented players that you obviously would love to have back. But again, with how well this team recruits and hits the transfer portal, you feel good about what you're bringing in, and you also feel really good about what's coming back. The defensive line has the potential to be an absolute monster of a group. When you look at the edges, you have Patrick Payton coming back. He's a future NFL player. Marvin Jones Jr. is has a future in the NFL as well. Now, Marvin Jones comes in from Georgia. Obviously, that was a huge get for the Bulldogs. And eventually, people are going to transfer from Georgia. That just is what it is. They're going to lose talent. And Florida State was ready. They had the right pitch in place. They had their NAL figured out, and they got a player that is going to have a massive impact on this team. Patrick Payton is going to command a lot of attention, and that opens things up for Marvin Jones. But you're also going to see 2 players that it's kind of almost that party in the backfield, race to the quarterback sort of thing. And it would be really fun to watch those 2 compete to see who is going to be the more disruptive player. On the interior, you have Joshua Farmer coming back. That was a huge return for this team. You also have Daryl Jackson, a big player at 6'5, 335 34 pounds, and you look at what he's capable of doing, you're looking at a player that is ready to take a massive step for this team. And that's huge because you have 3 other guys that are going to command so much of the attention that Jackson doesn't have to be a hero. He just has to play his role, and he's going to have a huge season. That's how good this defensive line is going to be this year. And they have plenty of depth behind them. So even though there might be some concerns about experience, I think that this is going to be a really fun group to watch in 2024. Grady Kelly is another option on the interior. He'll be really fun to watch. If Farmer needs a break, Daniel Lyons is another one that could play a role in that as well. So the defensive line is going to be disruptive. It's just a matter of how disruptive can they be, and what does that do for the guys behind them, and the linebackers behind them. There's obviously going to be some new faces as part of the rotation, but you also get a guy like DJ Lundy back. That is an experienced player that can help some of these younger guys get into position. You also have Blake Nicholson, who's going to take over after playing in all 14 games last year, had 17 tackles as a true freshman. This is someone who is ready for that new opportunity. 6'3", 220 pounds. He's a really fun player to watch. You have another sophomore in Omar Graham that's right behind him that will push him for time. You also have Sean Murphy, another sophomore. You have plenty of, and AJ Trill, you have plenty of sophomores that are ready to take that step. And again, this speaks to recruiting. This speaks to what Florida State has done really well, and that is recruit young and talented players to be able to compete right off the bat. This is a group that's not going to waste any time, and they are going to get after it and push the guys in front of them. And they have a number of freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores that are ready to compete for playing time, even if they're not necessarily projected to be there. That is huge for a team to have that. It breeds competition, and that's only going to help your team get better. Now, when you look at what the guys behind them have, I think that you feel pretty good about the secondary. You feel like you're in a good position. And when you look at what this group did last year, they finished 11th against the pass, and you filled some holes through the transfer portal, but you also, again, recruited well. So you know exactly what you have coming back, and you have plenty of talent that's going to make this group really fun to watch. Central Cyprus is probably the guy that everyone has their eyes on. He is someone who has a really good skill set to be able to shut down opposing wide receivers. Opposite of him, Azari Thomas comes into a newer role. You know, he'll be fun to watch. 6'2", 194 pounds. And he is someone who had experience as a true freshman and a sophomore. So he has some experience to bring to the table. And it's going to be fun to see him get a full year under his belt. Kevin Knowles is going to play the nickel position. He is an intriguing player because the nickel position is always going to be so intriguing, because whether it's him or Earl Little, you have guys that are going to be asked to do a lot of different things. And in Adam Fuller's system, they are a vital piece of that puzzle. They are going to be utilized in blitz packages as well as moving them all around the field, covering different levels of wide receiver. That's going to be tough. So he is someone to keep an eye on for that. The safety position, you feel pretty good about Shaheem Brown. That's someone who you're really excited about if you're a Florida State fan. KJ Kirkland is another guy who is ready to take on a bigger role as a redshirt freshman. Maybe Ashland Barker is another guy that could step up. Conrad Hussey on the opposite side will be a really fun player to watch. Another guy, another sophomore that is coming into a role. That's really exciting for the long-term future of this program. You have lots of young talent that is either starting or going to compete for starting spots. That only means good things for this program, especially with how well this team has been recruiting. Devontae Brown will also play a part of that. He may start at the safety position. You'd like to see him get back to his UCF days. Obviously, that has been something that we haven't seen for a little while. He transferred to Miami last year. That didn't work out. And now he's with Florida State. I think that he has plenty of talent, has the speed, has the size to be competitive with some of these players that he's going to face. And that means that he'll be able to help some of these younger guys get up to speed and learn the nuances of playing the position and help with a group that overall is very experienced, has plenty of talent. It's just a matter of gelling together because there's a few new faces that will be part of this. And there's also seeing some young players that maybe haven't been in such an important role before. But again, this is really exciting. If you're Florida State, you feel really good about where this program is headed, and you have a ton of talent on both sides of the football to utilize. And that's huge because you have a schedule that's really interesting. Now, it's not the most difficult schedule of any team, but it's also got plenty of potential challenges. And when you have some of the questions that you have if you're Florida State, you need to get your act together right off the bat. And they know that. And this, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is a group that still feels betrayed by the college football playoff committee, that still feels hurt, that is very angry, that is very motivated to get back on track. And that is a factor that I don't think we're talking about enough, because that is definitely motivation to get back there. They are going to make it so that there is no doubt if they are one of the best teams in college football. And if they can answer those questions quickly, is because everybody is laser focused and ready to go. And that helps them navigate this schedule. Georgia Tech is the first game right off the bat. They are over in Ireland, which is kind of a random matchup to have, but Also, an opportunity for Florida State to send a message. Georgia Tech is a team that wants to be a surprise of the conference. They want to be a team that sneaks up on people, and Florida State is ready to put them in their place. They want to say, you are not ready, you are not on our level, and we are going to make that statement right off the bat. A week zero game is a tough one to get ready for, but I trust that this program will be ready for that game. And if they can send a message in week one, that opens things up for a lot of exciting opportunities later in the season. Then you get Boston College. So that's a tough way to start, to have two ACC opponents right off the bat. Granted, one of them is in Dublin. That's a whole different logistical thing to figure out. But then Boston College is at home. So that is another solid game to have. But also, Boston College could be a difficult test. That is another opportunity, though, to send a message. Then you get 2 weeks off and you face Mike Norvell's former team. And this is a team in Memphis that is also playing with a chip on their shoulder. They are looking to get into the college football playoff as the top group of five team, and upsetting Florida State would put them on the map. Now, I don't think that that's going to happen, but you definitely have to take Memphis serious. That offense is no joke. Their defense is super talented and returns a ton of talent. So that's a group you need to take seriously. And if you're 2-0 at this point, you definitely feel like Florida State is going to be ready for that test. Then they host Cal at home. This will be a really interesting game. It's Cal's first ACC game. Cal's a very underrated team, a very interesting team when it comes to the 2024 season, and they have a lot of talent that kind of flies under the radar. A trip to SMU. Now, we will know for sure what SMU is going to be in 2024 by this point, and if they're playing with a ton of confidence, this has the makings for an absolute barn burner. This could be a shootout for sure, and it'd be really fun to see how Florida State handles its first true road game of the season. That is a tough one, especially because you have Clemson the next week at home. You cannot look ahead to Clemson because SMU is ready to pull off an upset. So you have games that, yes, Florida State should win, but they are also games that you need to take serious or they might not go your way. After Clemson, you get 2 weeks off, and then you face Duke on the road, and then you also face Miami on the road right after that. Those would be two interesting games for different reasons. North Carolina is at home after that, a trip to Notre Dame, and then you ended the season with Charleston Southern and Florida. So when you look at the schedule, the ceiling is 12-0. I'm going to say that right now. This is a team that has the talent to go 12-0. Beating Clemson would be a huge way to ensure that you're going to make the college football playoff, but also it tells me that you are definitely capable of winning every single game. The floor to me, when you're looking at this schedule, there are definitely losable games. Now, the Georgia Tech game is just so different because you don't know what you're going to get with these college kids going overseas and playing in a neutral site game in a different time zone. Not going to say that Georgia Tech is for sure going to win. That is a game that if things are just not going well for Florida State, I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia Tech finds a way to sneak one out, but I'm not going to predict that. Boston College is tough, but again, that game is at home. Memphis and Cal are both tough for their different reasons, but Florida State is definitely the better team. SMU is definitely a game that Florida State could lose if things aren't going exactly to plan. Clemson is definitely a losable game. Clemson is a very good team. The Miami game is losable. You could kind of see them losing to North Carolina. I trust that Florida State's in a better position though, so I wouldn't really project that. Notre Dame is definitely a losable game too. So really, to me, I think that the floor is 8-4. I think this is a group that has a lot of success lined up for them this year and in the long run. And Mike Norvell has done a great job of bringing in the right guys, keeping the right coaches in place. And Florida State, with that extra motivation from last year, is set to have a pretty exciting season in 2024.